Hi, I'm Nate with Average Archery, Pro Shop and Range here in Phillipsburg, PA. And today I want to debate you. I think your bow axle to axle length is too short. Let's talk about it. So this topic, this idea comes from this extremely oddball looking build. And when I say oddball looking build, I have a very short bow by target bow standards being set up as an outdoor 3D rig in the open class. 30-inch front bar, 12-inch back bar, a whole bunch of weight everywhere. And why I'm setting up a hunting bow, 33-inch axle to axle elite ethos for a 3D rig. And more importantly, why I think you should really start thinking about mid-range axle to axle lengths being the bow that really does it for you across all scopes and spectrums, whether that's hunting, 3D, field, indoor, etc. So a little backstory on how this bow came about. Last year it was great to see Levi Morgan took his Matthews, I think it was a phase 4 at the time, took it out the 33-inch model and shot lights out with it in the ASA, and I think he took it in the IBO circuit of 3D archery as well. I know at least he won at least one leg and maybe podium and a few others right towards the tail end of the season, and he did it because it was shooting very well and to prove that you don't need a 40-inch or a 38-inch axle-to-axle bow to get into target archery, 3D archery, and perform very, very well. However, what he also proved at the same time is that a short axle-to-axle bow, meaning 30 inches and less, 31 inches and less, might not be the best option in terms of accuracy and consistency when it comes to making shots at hunting-sized animals. Now I know it's 3D, it's foam, it's a little bit different, but bear with me on this one. And I was like, let's see what this thing does if we set it up in an open setup. So I have a 30-inch Bee Stinger competitor and a 12-inch competitor off the back, a very budget-friendly front and back bar kit you can get from Bee Stinger. I have a B3, the standard exact 3D sight that I shoot, and a Viper scope. ETAC light, which is new. I'll have a video on that in the future. Hamski rest. So this is realistically, with the exception of the sight and the longer bars, this is basically how I shoot the bow for hunting season. Limb stops, 31-inch draw, 70 pounds, around 82-ish% let off. So there's nothing wild and crazy here in terms of going from the hunting rig to a 3D rig or an indoor rig even. And I was shooting it lights out, and I've been shooting it lights out ever since. I took it up to the second leg of the IBO Triple Crown in Franklin, Pennsylvania, and I took second there in MBO just a couple days ago, actually. So this bow has been shooting incredibly well for me, and it really got me thinking, how about I need to make a video on 33, 34, 32-inch bows really should kind of be more of your forte. I know a lot of people really like to push for shorter axle-to-axle bows because they're lighter, they're more maneuverable, which that's a different video for a different time. People have been taking 64, 68-inch long bows into the woods for centuries and never had a problem with maneuverability. So I think that's a crock of hooey. But a 32, 33-inch bow with how they're machining risers these days, Elite's making the carbon bow now in the era. You get a lot of really lightweight bows in a longer, more stable platform that I think increase your shooting ability in terms of your reliability at longer distances. And also, I think they're just more fun to shoot year round. The more fun you have shooting your bow year round, the more you're encouraged to shoot your bow. We've had lots of people come into my shop that shot in our winter leagues in the bow hunter setup. So they're shooting a standard diameter arrow, their normal hunting rig, right? And a lot of them are shooting a bow that's 29 to 32 inches axle to axle. Most of them are probably closer to 30, 31 inches axle to axle. And it's okay to shoot that, right? They kind of enjoy it, but they notice when they shoot their buddy's bow or if they buy a longer axle to axle, not necessarily target bow, right? The ethos is not designed to be a target bow. It's designed to be a longer axle to axle hunting bow. Same thing with like the Matthews, the Phase 4 33 and the Lift 33. And of course, there's other bow companies out there as well that are doing that, shorter and longer axle to axle bows, same cam platform and everything, but you get the idea. They will enjoy that longer axle-to-axle bow more. It's stable, their points inside go up, and they just kind of get used to that little bit heavier weight. And when you start talking a shorter bow that's super light, most of the time, in order for you to get better accuracy out of it at longer distances, you're adding a bunch of weight to it anyway in the form of stabilizers. It's become more and more common for guys to shoot a 12, 15-inch front bar, which that's a decent amount of length and a decent amount of weight here out the front end, and also a longer back bar, an 8, 10, 12-inch back bar. So if you're going to put that much length and that much weight onto a short axle-to-axle bow, why not just get a longer axle-to-axle bow that the mass weight of it, right, the pendulum, right, just like a grandfather clock. You want the weight to feel down here. So if you have more riser down here, more weight down here, it's going to be more stable down there. It blows my mind when people buy $1,000 bow, $1,500 bow, $2,000 bow, if it's a carbon and it's really expensive, and they throw a whole bunch of stabilizer weight on it. Just buy the aluminum that most likely is longer, axle to axle. Your brace height increases a little bit, which traditionally brace height, deepest part of the groove of the grip to the string. The longer that is, the more forgiving a bow is. Now, traditionally, the slower the bow is. The Ethos, however, at least for me, and the Kure included, which is the shorter draw version of the Ethos, also from Elite, same axle to axle, it has not been the case in terms of speed lost by going to a 6 3/4 inch brace height. 410 grain, gold tip 30X arrow, and at 31 inches and 70 pounds, I'm doing 317 feet a second. That is cooking. Thankfully in the MBO class, I do not have a speed limit. Now that's not as fast as some guys go in the IBO. But if I wanted to take this bow to ASA, I'd have to wind it out to 60 pounds with that arrow just to stay at my speed cap. So this thing is absolutely spitting bullets. And when I shoot my hunting arrow, which is a 517 grain with a lighted knock, gold tip kinetic chaos, and it's going almost 290 feet a second. So this bow is absolutely blazing. And when it comes to draw cycle, a lot of people think, oh, you have a really rough draw cycle because you're getting speed. Traditionally, out of a longer axle to axle bow, because the cams are further away from each other, it increases that string angle and it makes the draw cycle a lot easier. So again, this is 70 pounds, 31 inches. I do the performance mods on here, and this thing is absolute butter. I mean, who wouldn't want to draw that? I mean, I can tell you right now, and the let-off's great there, if it was super difficult for me to draw back, I definitely would not want to be shooting it for 3D, for indoor, okay? Now, maybe I won't shoot 70 pounds for indoor because you're shooting a lot more arrows. But for 3D, I have had zero issues with this bow whatsoever drawing. I mean, that's as good as it's going to get. And vibration and noise, it's great. So it kind of makes me cringe a little bit when guys come into the shop and they're like, hey, I'm gonna buy a new bow and I'm gonna hunt with it, right? Maybe tinker with some 3D. And they're like, I want the shortest, lightest bow possible because I'm gonna be schlepping it around the woods. I want it to be maneuverable up a tree or in a ground blind. And then I'm like, okay, well, how big are you? That's a big deal, right? People often forget that this is not the problem. This is not the problem in the tree. It's literally your physical presence. How big is your tree stand? How much room is in your ground blind? Because at the end of the day, you take up the most space. And for me, with my bow, obviously I have a 30-inch stabilizer out here. This arrow is not as long as my normal hunting arrows. It doesn't have a broadhead on the front, and it's not that much shorter than the stabilizer. My biggest problem is not the axle to axle length of the bow. It's the arrow sticking out the front. Or if you put a 15-inch bar or a 12-inch bar out there, that's your problem. So if you plan on doing 3D with it, you plan on maybe shooting spots at your local range, indoor, something fun, doesn't have to be serious. Why would you want to take a 29-inch, 30-inch bow out there? In my opinion, take a 33, take a 34-inch bow out there. You're only going to add quarter pound, half pound at the most of weight. And if you're going to be adding a whole bunch of stabilizer and weight to a short bow to get it to balance and feel more stable at full draw, I don't know. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I would do. Also too, if you're gonna be spending all the time, effort, and energy to tune a target arrow for tack or local 3D stuff, fat diameter, skinny diameter, fixed blade broadheads, mechanical broadheads, you probably also want the most forgiving platform for you, which traditionally, the longer that axle to axle length is and the more generous the brace height, usually it makes it easier on the archer to do all that. I've been able to shoot 5mm arrows, 27 diameter arrows, 26 diameter arrows here in these 30Xs, bullet holes through paper, no issues whatsoever. And the glorious thing with Elites and all that sort of thing is I can fine tune with a rotating module, quarter-inch draw lengths, all the let-off adjustment, limb stop, cable stop, set technology to fine tune broadhead flight or fat diameter arrows. So it just makes life a lot simpler when I shoot a longer axle to axle platform, not too long, I mean 33. It's not that big of a deal. and then have all the technology behind it with the rotating module, adjustable let off, and really get this bow feeling exactly the way I need to, whether I'm shooting 3D spots or in the field this fall. But I've been flapping my gums long enough on this topic. If you have any questions about longer axle-to-axle bows for hunting, 3D setups, and everything else, please do drop a comment down below here on YouTube. You can always find us, Average Jack Archery, Facebook and Instagram. You could even send us an email, averagejackarchery@gmail.com. If you are in the Pennsylvania area, you want to stop by our shop in Phillipsburg, PA, you can check us out on 21 North Front Street in Phillipsburg, PA. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery. Archery hunting, if you so choose, definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation. Think about a longer bow, and we'll get to see you next time.